Hello, my name is Noah Rimer, and this is my fictional culture called the Kruaré. Who are they? So basically, they're a civilization that has been living in Antarctica since the Ice Age. They came over on the ice bridge during thousands of years ago, and since then have been completely isolated from the rest of mankind. The word Kruaré means people of the ice, and they live in the Bosphorus of Antarctica. They have five gods: Bia, Shuba, Areta, Rabot, and Ipage, and I will go further in depth later on. Ipage, with her brothers and sisters, led her people across the ice bridge to escape the Gyoba. Um, and with the help of the gods, she helped establish a new culture down in Antarctica. And people looked to her for guidance and wisdom. And when she died, they believed that she ascended and joined the ranks of the gods, and is now the goddess of people. Laws. Those accused of a crime have to be sent out to the ice for 4 days to be passed judgment by the gods. Via, the god of summer in summer months, and Shuba, the god in the winter months. If they survive the 4 days and come back, then they are innocent of their crimes. Every god, excluding Ipage, I'm sorry, has a shaman who has devoted their lives to their god. Um, they're part of a council that advises the sitting leaders of the tribe, and they have no vote in elections and are forbidden from voicing preferences in elections. Excluding shamans, people are forbidden from speaking out against tribal leaders, except at election times, but they can still confide in shamans. And children of darkness, so children born in the winter months, must speak in formal tones to children of light, so children born in the summer months. It's an old law, it's no longer practiced, but I think that it's an interesting way to show how the culture has changed over time. The morals: if someone wrongs you, you're expected to show the same open mind and compassion of Ipage. As much as you take from the land, you must give back, always staying within the balance of nature. And children are raised communally and are taught that all members of the community are their family. Twice a year, during the ceremony between light and darkness, so the fall and spring equinox, you set a place at the table for Ipage, and you give it to a stranger with nowhere to go. Children are not named in their first year. After a year, they're presented with four objects representing each god, and their choice is thought to have been guided by their protector god, and their name is chosen in honor of that. And at meal times, the eldest must eat first and rises first. No one else is allowed to do that before them. A deviant subculture are those that don't believe in the divinity of the gods and strive to return to Rayimota, which means land beyond the sea. They don't believe that the Kruaré should have left at all. So this picture is to show how close South America and Antarctica really are, where the ice bridge would have been if there was one. Taboos are speaking out against tribal leaders or shamans, um, and killing animals for sport rather than food because of the cycle and the balance between the people and nature around them and the importance of that balance. When a child reaches 17, until they reach 17, I'm sorry, their last name is the first name of their parents. So daughter's last name is the first name of their father, and son's last name is the first name of their mother. When they turn 17, at the fall or spring equinox, whoever has turned 17 in the last 6 months goes through like a coming of age ceremony, and they're guided by their protector god, and they must pass a series of 5 tasks to appease each god. Those that pass lose their parents' name and receive new last names that indicate the beginning of their apprenticeship for their gods, which are now adult members of society. Their phonemes are ta, ra, which is similar to like French or Arabic or Hebrew, ya, ka, and pa. Adjectives come after nouns in the first letter of words that are associated with the gods or divinity or capitalized. So kua means people, are means ice, miro means baby, miro are means penguin, yotadu means food, bina capitalized means light, shuna capitalized means darkness, tae means water, rakibo means earth or land, and botire means plants. So because of the way that their children's last names work, the lineage is bilateral. So even if a parent passes and the other parent remarries, the child's last name does not change. And the eldest child, regardless of gender, is responsible for caring for the parents. Even though there are members of society whose job is to take care of the elderly, it's the responsibility of the eldest child to make sure that happens. Marriage within the community are exogamous, in the sense that as a child of light, you can only marry a child of darkness, and vice versa. And this is to ensure that representation from both gods is present in every family over all children. And the residential arrangements after are by loco, which means that if they get married in the summer, they go live with the family of the partner who is a child of summer or child of light. And if it's the winter, they go live with the family of the person who was born in the winter. And this is a cultural norm. It's not law, but it's generally followed. And marriages are monogamous, and the final choice is ultimately the woman's. As a sign of betrothal, the husband offers the bride and her family a pebble as a bride wealth. If accepted, as like a proposal. If accepted, the bride's family takes the pebble, turns it into like a necklace, and then the necklace is given to the bride as a dowry on the wedding day as an indication of parental approval and blessing and like a wedding gift. Both death and divorce, remarriage is allowed. In the case of divorce, they have to seek out approval from their protector, God's shaman. So it could be abuse or violence could be a reason that they would get accepted to divorce. Another could be if the spouse is found guilty of a crime, then the partner is allowed to like remove association. Same-sex marriages exist within the Kruaré, and essentially just the pebble is offered by whichever partner initiates the betrothal. And arrangements kind of exist in the sense that you have to be married to someone born in the opposite time of year, but that's pretty much it. You can seek out arranged marriages through your parents, but many seek out their own partners. Both are fine and acceptable. Due to the emphasis on like the parents' births and the child's last names, nuclear families are important, but the children are raised communally. So they also have this mentality of like a village-wide extended family. So because it's an isolated culture, the name Kruaré is kind of synonymous as the name of the religion. There wouldn't ever be a need to differentiate between the two because their religion is their culture and their culture is their religion. It's polytheistic, and their deities are Bia, who's the god of light. He's the highest of the gods, and he rules in the summer months. Shuba, who's the god of darkness, who's Bia's younger brother, rules in the winter months. Areta, who's the goddess of ice and water. Rabot, who's the god of earth and plants. And Ipage, who's the goddess of humans. Each god has their own chosen shaman. In the beginning, the two brothers, Bia, who was older, and Shuba, who was the younger, were placed on a vacant earth by the stars, and they saw a new world, in which case they could completely build anew. I'm sorry. So they began covering it in a sheet of ice, and amidst a disagreement, Bia pushes Shuba, and it causes him to fall, and a rift forms in the ice and pushes the two pieces to the two poles. From the rift itself emerges Areta, who's the goddess of ice and water. She rescues Shuba from the fall and is invited by the brothers to join them in the creation of the world. But the waters were becoming too overpowering and too strong, and Areta was beginning to lose control. And so it was decided to break up the seven seas by creating land, which would weaken their power. And land was made by pushing volcanoes up from the seafloor. And from this volcano comes another god, Rabot, who brings forth earth and plants and rules over them. Because the two brothers couldn't come to an agreement on how to rule the world, they decided to split their rule between the season of light and the season of darkness, so summer and winter. And the gods would soon come to find that they can't stay on Earth to be amongst their creation. So each of them cut off a finger, and from that finger creates a human to care for and watch over the Earth. And they vow to protect them and all their descendants, and send them off to populate the Earth. In which case, when a child is a year old and chooses an object which is guided by the protector god, it's connected to this. When Kruaré die, their loved ones dig a hole into the ice and bury them, believing that the ice holds and protects their body for the afterlife, which they'll need. And by giving their body back to the earth, they're giving back all that's taken from it. Their soul then goes on to join and strengthen the protector God. The salvation, they reach salvation if they live their lives to full moral guidelines of their society and God's. And twice a year, as I said before, the place is set for Ipage at the meal table as an act of devotion to her. And while the gods can guide and protect those that are devoted to them, ultimately we have free will on earth, and those that simply don't follow will be left without protection against the harshness of the world. They follow a hunter-gatherer adaptation. They receive most of their nutrition from hunting and fishing. Due to not many plants being around them, there are small amounts of plants that grow around them that they eat. And they're within the greater Kruaré community are slightly smaller nomadic groups, so about 60 to 75 that are self-sufficient but still rely on the larger group as a whole. They don't really have competition with other humans, so they have access to everything, but there is competition with other animals. Men generally hunt, trap, and create boats and homes from raw materials such as stone, bone, horn, and shell. When women typically gather shellfish and wild plant foods, fetch water, and make food and clothing. And both genders fish and prepare skins and leather for home and clothing and gather small land animals. Due to the whole community having come together thousands of years ago, and it's not an especially large community, different races or extremes in different skin tone wouldn't really be relevant to this community. It's a pretty homogenous community, and this is also immigration and borders. If any voyagers came from South America, there'd be obvious issues with language and cultural differences. And they don't really have a military, like a standing military per se, but those that are trained in hunting would probably assume the role of fighter or warrior if need be. And they're too small for a police force as a community. The people of Kruaré fall into 3 categories: men, women, and padeku, which is a general term for ones that don't fall into either category. Intersex people also usually fall under this name unless they choose to assume the role of one of the other two. Gender roles are not strictly enforced in childhood, and at 17, at the coming of age ceremony when they receive their jobs, intersex or transgender people typically just receive jobs that align with the gender they choose to identify with. And those that are padeku, their spirit is believed to have come from the split of the ice and the creation of the world, like around the same time as the birth of Lagaita, representing an in-between of the 2 poles. Same-sex relationships are accepted within the Kruaré. So the tribe has a formal leadership advised by a council of shamans. There are small bands of sodalities called Aik, which are self-sufficient for food and living quarters. These bands come together for ceremonies and celebrations, big hunts, cultural reasons. Their economic system follows a generalized reciprocity. It's an egalitarian society amongst the general population, but any stratification will essentially be the shamans and then tribal leaders, which are chosen, and then everyone else. Many Kruaré will tattoo their hands to give them strength and tattoo other parts of their body to fight off disease and infection. And they would typically live in caves like these in Antarctica, which can reach up to 25 degrees Celsius, and they carve in the walls and paint onto the walls as another art form.